Thank you all who are with us this morning. Always happy to bring Howard Jackson in. Howard does many workshops and seminars with us every year, and we appreciate that. Today he's going to talk about It Still Matters, respectful workplace. And you would think that we always have these things in mind, but I think now more than ever, it's really important. And so Howard, with that, a couple of things. I'm going to let everybody stay muted. If you have a question, we'll address it at the end. And then if you missed something today, then we are recording this. And so it will be available for view tomorrow. So with that, Howard, first of all, thank you for doing this, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tammy. One reason that this comes up now is we're starting to see reports through the EEOC and otherwise that as the virus has come in and impacted so many workplaces and so many people, and then as workplaces have begun to sort of open or try to stay open, there's been a kind of an uptick in national origin mistreatment, as well as disability concerns and people just generally feeling anxiety, and that beginning to express itself in ways that really aren't good or healthy or appropriate for the workplace. And so it's a good time to be reminded of the kind of things that we need to expect in the workplace. And so today I'm going to go through some thoughts about how we can create and maintain a respectful workplace, how we can make our shared values work and kind of use them in ways to hold people accountable when they don't abide by the expectations. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what the EEOC has to say about these kinds of claims and how they arise. And at the end, I'm going to go through a few examples for you of 2020 cases, very recent things that happened in workplaces and ended up with legal issues. And so hopefully you'll get a good little overview of it as we go through. And at the end, as Tammy indicated, you can send questions in via chat so that we're not trying to talk over each other, and we'll be glad to address them. And so I use the word respect for this as we go through and try to think about what it means to have a respectful workplace. And so the first letter is R, of course, it's respect. What does that mean? It means more than just sort of not shouting at each other. There's more to it than that. One thing we got to remember is that conflict is inevitable. It's not realistic to say, well, we're going to have this workplace where we have no conflict. The question is not whether we're going to have conflict or not. The question is, how are we going to handle it? And one of the ways that we handle it is we can do so while respecting everyone's dignity. There's a way to, some judges and lawyers like to talk about, we do a lot of fighting in my work, so to speak, but they use a phrase that, you can disagree without being disagreeable. And that's one way to think about it, that while we may disagree with somebody, while we may not think they are looking at something in the right way, we can express ourselves in a manner that respects their dignity, and the same thing vice versa. And we can and should expect that of ourselves, first of all, and of our employees and our team. We can create a workplace culture of respectful treatment. Every workplace has a culture. There's no avoiding it. You have one. The question is, are we going to be intentional about creating a workplace culture and about making sure that respectful treatment by everyone towards everyone is a very significant part of that culture. It does include more than just simply not yelling at each other. It includes respect for cultural identity. We all have one. I'm a North Georgia hillbilly. That's a cultural identity. But we all have one of one sort or another, and we need to respect that when we're interacting with each other, and understand that the way that I see things, the way that I understand something being said may strike someone else differently, based on his or her background. We need to have respect for job duties, our own job duties, as well as those of others. It might be that somebody is in connection with handling their job the way that they're supposed to, is asking me to do something that is not my favorite thing to do, but I understand it's part of their job. And I need to have respect for that. And the same needs to be true for when I'm communicating perhaps something about my job that's maybe not the favorite thing of somebody else. We need to have respect for the duties that each of us have to do on behalf of the organization. Need to have respect for people's personal life and personal views. And we'll have more to say about that when we get into talking about harassment specifically. But, you know, everyone has their own personal life, their own personal views, their own way of looking at things. It may or may not be the same as ours. And that's not a reason to treat someone in a disrespectful way or to try to think that we can force them to view things the way that we do. We need to be each one respectful with one another in that area as well. Next letter is E, and that stands for equal. Equal does not mean the same. Everybody's not the same. Some of them are shorter, some of them are taller, some of us are younger, some of us are older, some of us are male, some of us are female, and the list goes on. Equal does not mean that we're all the same. We're not all the same, and that's a good thing. But people are of equal value. Everyone deserves to have their dignity respected. Everyone is a person of value. I mean, we can go back to the Declaration of Independence on that if you want to. You know, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all of us are created equal. And so, you know, that's a value that we need to embrace in our workplaces. It does mean everybody. Everyone is of equal value. All people are of equal value. And that's a value, again, in our workplace that leads to respectful treatment and a respectful culture. In addition, when we think about not only right and wrong, but legal requirements, everyone needs to be given an equal opportunity. You know, everyone may not take advantage of that. Some people are going to have higher skills than others. That's where equal is not the same. We don't all have the same skills and abilities, but we need to be given equal opportunity to show what we can do or to develop our skills. And we need to be mindful of that as we go about hiring, returning from layoff, handling people in their performance reviews, as well as corrective actions. Everyone gets the same opportunity to perform and gets an opportunity to be considered when that's appropriate for hiring, promotions, etc. And so the word equal comes into play in the workplace. We have equal expectations for respectful treatment of others. And this expectation applies to everybody. If we allow one individual because they're talented in a particular area or have a base of knowledge that we need, and we sort of allow them to go around yelling at and mistreating and being hostile to whoever they feel like it on the day when they're in a bad mood, we're not upholding our values, and we're not applying that expectation to everybody. And that's, you'll see that can be a good way to get ourselves in trouble. And it's just simply not the right way to manage our organization. The expectation needs to apply of equal treatment needs to apply to everybody, not just some people. S is the next letter. We got to show respect in all that we do. People believe what you do more than what you say. And that's the truth. We all know that from our experience. There's nothing rocket science about that. People may, as popular saying these days, people may forget what you said, but they won't remember how you made them feel. And if you show them respect in how you treat them, that's going to have an impact on how they view you, just as it does to you. When someone in their interactions with you shows you respect by just the way that they behave towards you, that impacts how you feel about that person. That impacts how you trust that person. That impacts how you want to work with that person versus you may not want to work with the person. So when you show respect in your behavior, you are contributing to creating a respectful workplace. How do you do that? You can show respect by way of behavior such as body language and tone of voice. A great deal of our communication is nonverbal. If you're looking away towards somebody else or something else while you're talking to somebody, they're going to get it that you're not paying that much attention to them. You don't really want to talk to them. Your body language is telling them that. Your tone of voice, trailing off or being flat or dull, again, communicates your level of interest in respect or disinterest and lack of respect. And so paying attention to how you listen, how you talk, how you interact is a way that you demonstrate respect, or that you fail to demonstrate respect when you're dealing with the people in your workplace. And it pays to be intentional and conscious about this so that we can make sure we behave this way and show what we intend to show, which is respectful, versus not paying attention and sort of inadvertently giving someone a message that they're not important to us or that we don't have respect for them. Another way is just simple acts of consideration, for other people. You hold the door, you bring somebody a bottle of water, etc. The list goes on. It's a matter of paying attention and just simply training yourself and teaching yourself to be a person of consideration, that in a way that shows respect to the people that you work with. It's not conceptually hard. It's just something that we need to keep in our minds and be conscious of in how we treat people, no matter what else is going on at work. P stands for professional. Professionalism means that we are at work. We're not at home, we're not in the store, we're not laying out by a pool or something. We're at work, and that brings with it some expectations of what we're going to do ourselves and what we're going to expect of others in the organization. And professionalism is a lot more than just simply image. We talk about professionalism in terms of how we present ourselves by way of dress and image, and okay, that's part of it. And it's certainly right that we want to present ourselves appropriately and with a good image in the workplace. But I would submit to you that professionalism goes a lot farther than that. Professionalism includes knowledge of the job. It's important for you to know and understand and keep up with what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to know in your job, whatever your job may be. Embracing professionalism means that you're committed to having the knowledge, to doing the learning, to knowing what it is that you're supposed to do in your job. Professionalism includes acting with integrity. That's a word that gets thrown out a lot. We'd like to flesh out just a little bit about what that means. Integrity means being honest, and it further means that how you act matches what you say. My dad told me a story years ago when he was on a high school football team, and the coach was standing in front of him smoking a cigar and saying, "Now, boys, y'all don't do this." If you say this is what we expect of people, but you don't behave that way, that's not acting with integrity. You're not showing by your actions the kind of things that you're saying as a leader in your organization that we expect. So professionalism and the showing of integrity means that we behave consistent with what we say our expectations are, and believe it, and people will see that whether we do it or whether we don't do it. The next E stands for encourage. Encourage each other. I mean, that may sound like a silly thing, but let's give it some thought for a minute. How does it feel when someone encourages you? Suppose that you've put a lot of work in and you've produced a good product and you got a good result, and you turn that in and it's known, and that's it. Nothing happens. But how does it feel if your supervisor or if your coworkers see this? They give you encouragement for it. They appreciate what you've done. How's that feel? How much does it cost to be encouraging? We got a marketing budget to put up signs on the interstate or to put up social media and to spend all kinds of money on those things. But how much does it cost to encourage somebody? I mean, the answer to that is obvious. It doesn't cost anything. How many advanced degrees do you need to be an encourager? Well, you don't need any. And I'll use that word, to be an encourager. That's one I heard some years ago when unfortunate situation, but I've long remembered it for a reason that maybe you'll understand in a minute. I was going to a church at the time, and a dear lady there that I didn't too much know, but some of my friends did, and they were real upset, and she had passed away of cancer. And so I went to the funeral to support them. And it was a pretty large church, and it was full. And I said, golly, this person must have touched a lot of people's lives. And the pastor, during in his remarks, described her as an encourager. And he gave a lot of examples of how she had encouraged him and others in what she did. And so, you could see by the people who showed up to show their appreciation and their grief were impacted by her just simply encouraging them.
Howard,
Yes.
are you, just a quick question, are we supposed to be going through different slides?
Yes, I've gone through all the slides. You're not seeing them?
No, and I kept thinking, well, maybe no, we're not.
Oh gosh. My thing says I'm screen sharing, and it's moving when I move them. Thank you for stopping me. Let me try this. Okay, now I'm seeing you. Let me try the share screen again. I'm sure that didn't help. Well, I'm seeing it, but I'm having to do some sort of sign in here.
So, is that not it? He needs to enable editing. Howard,
Yes.
can you enable editing?
Okay. Well, now it says screen sharing stopped.
What? Share screen again. Share your screen again, please, Howard.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Go to the next one, please. Okay, so we're not going to redo the whole thing, Howard, but
You're seeing me as I change it now?
yes, I see it. Yeah, you're on
Okay.
R, so flip
Yeah.
on through there.
Okay, well, I'll click a little bit slowly just to kind of show you what I went through. Is you seeing that now?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not shouting at each other.
Howard.
I'm on a Zoom. Sorry, I didn't realize.
Well, I kept wondering if I first thought you were doing doing an introduction, and then I realized you were doing.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so you probably didn't understand my reference to some are short and
No,
some
I
are
didn't.
tall.
No, I understood all of them, and
I know, but okay. So we're on equal value, and I can send you PowerPoint as well if
Yes,
people want to
please.
have it when it's
That'd be great.
when we're done.
So sorry to stop you, but
No, I'm glad you did because it was working on my screen the whole time. I just assumed it was working on yours. So there's the fill-ins. We went through professionalism. So we were on encourage, I believe.
and
Yeah.
I'm encouraging you to show your slides.
Yes, thank you. Gosh. See, when you depend on a lawyer for technical. Yeah, so how many advanced degrees do you need? You don't need any. And I sort of went through my story about the lady who had impacted so many lives. And I'd encourage you to think about what would happen to your level of satisfaction at work if you regularly encouraged your coworkers and your management team and they encouraged you. I mean, what would that feel like? How would that impact your experience on a daily basis if this was made part of the fabric of your workplace? I'd submit to you that it would make a difference. C is champion. Everyone can be a champion of these values. A champion does not necessarily need to show it by vocal cheerleading. You know, that's one way. There's some people, that's how they're wired up. They're talkative. They want to get in front. They want to be visible in how they lead. And that's great. We need folks like that. You can also be a champion by leading through leading by example and showing people on a daily basis that you're part of creating a respectful workplace by living these values in how you behave yourself and how you treat others every day, day in and day out. So everybody can play the role in one way or the other of being a champion of these values. You can show your support for creating a culture of respect in a way that is consistent with who you are. You know, if you're the never met a stranger vocal cheerleader, do that, be that. That's who you are. If you're more of a person that's not your way of going about things, you tend to be a little more different in how you interact, a little calmer perhaps, or a little less outgoing, but you can still, again, be a champion of these values in the way that you behave yourself and in the way that you treat people. So I'm certainly not encouraging, not suggesting in any way that someone should try to have a transform their personality. Just simply adopt these values and live them in a way that is consistent with who you are as a person. T is for teamwork. It takes teamwork to make the dream work. It's an old saying. It's a Pat Summitt saying. It's true. We need to adopt an attitude of teamwork, that we're going to work together. No one individual can accomplish everything that an organization needs to get done. Adopting a teamwork attitude is a choice. You know, we can decide that that's how we're going to approach our workplace. That's how we're going to be in our organization, and we can choose that, and we need to be conscious about choosing it and intentional about choosing it. Teamwork involves recognizing and affirming that everyone in the organization is working to accomplish the same mission. You know, every organization has a mission. The chamber has a mission for the businesses and citizens in the county. The county has a mission for service to the citizens there. Microsoft has a mission for supplying software and handling their customers. Everybody has a mission, and every organization has a mission, and the people that are in it are looking to accomplish that same mission. We're all trying to get our organization to the same thing, whether you're a nonprofit, a government entity, a corporation. Your organization has a mission, and be on board with what that is and recognize that the people you're working with have the same mission. Teamwork involves recognizing and affirming each department, each employee has their own role in accomplishing the mission. You know, it's the same mission, but people do different things. Sales doesn't do the same thing as production. Who doesn't do the same thing as accounting? I mean, we need different pieces and parts of an organization, and within those departments, we need people to play and handle their own role in accomplishing what we're trying to do as an organization. And all of the roles are important, every single one of them. And so when we're talking to somebody who's in a different department, it's a respectful attitude to believe and to act that their department's role is important, just as our department's role is important. And for everyone to realize that and everyone to be on board with recognizing the importance and the significance of everybody else's role. That also is a part of having a respectful workplace. Adopting these values results in a more positive work environment. You know, if we understand that we're all trying to get our organization going in the same direction, we're all part of the same team, we're going to treat each other in a more positive way, a more respectful way. It's going to be a better place to work. It also allows for accountability and an atmosphere of trust. If we express these values of a respectful workplace, we say that we're going to expect everyone from no matter what the position, if you're in a senior leadership role, if you're in a beginning entrance type role, doesn't matter. We're going to expect all of you, everyone here, to exhibit and to live and to demonstrate these respectful workplace values. Then we have an ability to hold people accountable when they don't do it, and to have that happen in an atmosphere of trust, because they know that's what we're looking for and they see it in our leadership. So here's some examples of how we can apply these values in dealing with workplace situations. Suppose that an employee is consistently negative and so just sort of short, not that kind of attitude in how they deal with their coworkers. Well, how can we address that using the values? Well, that conduct is not respectful, nor is it professional. We're not being respectful. We're not respecting the dignity of others. We're not showing professionalism in how we treat other people and deal with them in our day-to-day interactions. And so we're going to expect you to show respectful and professional conduct in your treatment of others. Suppose an employee is late all the time and it makes it harder for others to get their work done. How can we address that kind of behavior using these values? The conduct is not professional and it doesn't demonstrate teamwork. Professionalism includes showing respect for your job, which means being on time. Being part of a team means that you're going to play your role in the proper way and respect others on the team. And if you're late all the time and you're making it harder for your other teammates to get their work done, you're not showing teamwork. You're not exhibiting that value. And so when we adopt these values expressly and communicate them, then we have a groundwork in place to address behavior that's not consistent with those values. Here's another example. Suppose an employee knows her job really well and shares her knowledge with coworkers, making them better performers. How can this be addressed? Can encourage her for her good work and sharing, which promotes professionalism and teamwork. We don't just apply the values when somebody's not showing them. We can also apply them when somebody is showing them, and encourage them and reward them and show gratitude to them for what they're doing, so that it will, we will build momentum with that person and with others in the right direction of having the kind of workplace culture that we want. Another example, suppose a management team member develops a training progression that helps employees learn their jobs better and more quickly. How can this be addressed? Again, encourage them for the professional work that contributes to the success of others and the organization as a whole. Applying the values in the situations where they are being followed just as much as we do in the situations where they're not. And so there's the whole sort of acronym for you. Hope you can find it helpful. When we have situations in the workplace that don't demonstrate respect and these values, unfortunately, sometimes you can end up with legal issues that often get characterized under the term harassment. And so we can see that when charges get filed with the EEOC, a whole lot of them include harassment. For example, you might have sex discrimination claim, but it'll also include a harassment component to it. Same thing is true. You see that the majority of harassment claims tend to be either race or sex. but you also have them on the basis of age, national origin, religion. It's possible to have a harassment claim on the basis of any protected category. And these things get filed all the time, unfortunately. Here's a slide that shows you a little bit about what it's like to be in management these days. Give you a second to look at it. Kind of which way do you go? You know, you can't always know. This guy is Captain Oblivious. You know, you don't want to be him engaging in sort of improper behavior when you're supposedly looking out for it. We got to be conscious of how we treat people, conscious of how others are treating each other in our workplace, so that, again, we develop the kind of culture that we want in a conscious way, an intentional way, and provide the education and the training that we need in order to do that. You can't allow people to go around and play grab butt. You know, it might be that the two people that are involved at your workplace have known each other since the 8th grade, and they've played games with each other like this since they were in the 8th grade, and they don't care. But if we see it and we allow it to go on, that sends a message that it's okay, and it's really not okay. So we got to make sure that we hold people accountable to our values and to how they treat each other in the workplace, and that we make sure that we're sending the right message, the message of how we expect people to treat each other. And one of the ways that we do that is that we got to make sure that sort of horseplay kind of stuff doesn't get to go on in ways that would tend to indicate that this behavior is okay, because it's really not. It can cause a lot of problems. We do have to remember, you know, there's a lot of talk these days about how we need to be aware of people's culture and their values, and that's all true and it's all good. But at the same time, we don't manage to crazy. You know, some people just have crazy expectations and crazy perceptions, and we can't be pushed around by that. Don't be afraid to manage appropriately, and to know that you don't have to jump through hoops for somebody that's just on another planet. And so I don't want anybody to think that you need to react to that kind of stuff. One of my partner's phrases is, we don't manage to crazy, and that's the truth. Politics, you know, people have an opinion, and I would encourage you to encourage your folks not to get into much in the way of political conversations at work. And one of the reasons for this, it's not that I'm encouraging a workplace to have, you know, support for any one candidate or any one party or position or not. What we've seen happening more and more in recent years, and kind of growing over the last even 5 or 6 years or more, is that when people start to get into conversations about politics, it's not very long before it kind of delves into issues of race and sex and gender and national origin and things of that. It quickly moves into areas where we don't want people to be having conversations, and then inevitably somebody says something that they shouldn't and sort of crosses a line, and then now you've got a whole situation that could lead to a legal claim or involve a discrimination issue, when you could prevent all that just by saying, look, folks, we have full respect for everybody's political beliefs and everybody's ability to campaign or discuss anything they want of that nature at the restaurant or at their home, but we're going to stay away from political battles here at work. That doesn't do anything to forward our mission or to make our workplace better. So let's not have political battles in the workplace. It's just one of those things. It's just better to not go there, because it tends to lead to bad situations. You got to be careful of language, how people talk to each other. Obviously, that has a lot to do with respectful workplace and what we say. You know, you just don't want to get into conversations where you're mentioning race, age, sex, protected categories, where people are speaking to each other in a really hostile manner. And even if they're not using those words specifically, maybe they're using code words, or maybe somebody's just in a bad mood all the time and uses profanity or speaks harshly. We can't allow that. That's not consistent with our values of respectful treatment. And so we got to, as our mother said, watch our language and what we say at work. It gets people in trouble all the time. There's all kind of cases that are where unbelievable comments are made part of it, and you'll see some of this as we go through some cases here in a minute. Social media, how low can you go? It's really has been amazing to me at times, the kinds of things that people will put on social media. I was involved in a situation not long ago where somebody had put comments on social media that were not very veiled threats towards an employee at a workplace. You can see that there's a certain percentage of people in the workplace that, for whatever reason, feel that it's perfectly fine and appropriate to air all sorts of things on social media that really would be better left unsaid at all, much less put out in a public place. And so we have to be aware of that. In thinking about this, though, it's also important to know that you don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction when you become aware of a comment or posting that somebody has put on social media as an employee, because there are some things they can say that are involve protected conduct. And I'll give you a quick case example. There's a BMW dealership in Illinois called Knauz BMW, Knauz, and they had an event to introduce a new car model, and it was in May, so it was kind of warm, and so they invited a lot of potential customers to come in and see this new model. And what they served for refreshments was nothing other than water and hot dogs. And the customers didn't like that too much. It was not considered up to the standard that would be expected. And so one of the salespeople posted on Facebook a complaint that, this was a bad practice by the dealership. It hurt my ability to, customers were upset. They wouldn't buy anything. I couldn't earn any commissions. And another salesperson kind of joined in and echoed those same sentiments that that did not work well. It hurt his ability to make sales, et cetera. And then the first salesperson that made this posting added something else. The same ownership group had a Land Rover dealership that was across the street. And somehow or another, a 14-year-old had managed to get in a Land Rover, started up, and he drove it over an embankment and into a pond that was there. So you got this very expensive vehicle sitting there in a pond. And the salesperson posted a picture of that along with the caption that said, this is your brain, and this is your brain on drugs, something like that, some reference to drugs. And the ownership didn't share his sense of humor about that, and they terminated him. And he went to the National Labor Relations Board and said, you can't terminate me for this because I was talking about my wages, my earnings. And the National Labor Relations Act gives employees the right to engage in concerted activity with each other relative to their wages, hours, and working conditions. And I was griping about my ability to earn commission, so that's protected. And the labor board agreed with him on that and said, yes, that your conversation with your coworkers about how the company has made it harder for you to earn commissions is a protected conversation. That being said, you're posting about the Land Rover and the kid driving it over in the embankment into the pond was not protected at all. And we find that the company would have fired you for that alone. So he didn't succeed. But the point of that story is that, there are things that employees can say on social media that are totally inappropriate and for which they can be terminated or otherwise disciplined. But there are also things they say that can be protected. And so we don't have a knee-jerk reaction. You need to, if you've got any question about that, talk to your human resource person or your labor attorney so we can you can get a good analysis about whether some or all of the commentary is protected. Accountability, we need to have consequences for folks when they don't live up to the values. We talked about some ways that we can use the values as a foundation for feedback, and sometimes we need to go further than that. But it is important that when we express the values, we hold people accountable when they don't abide by them and how they treat one another in the workplace. The EEOC looks at or has provided some promising practices that are by way of preventive steps when it comes to harassment, leadership, and accountability. If you have senior leadership that not only speaks the values but embodies them, that helps a lot. You need to have a comprehensive and effective policy. If you're not sure if your policy fits that bill, you can let us know. It's not that hard to review, but it's surprising to me these days how many times I continue to see policies that don't have things in them that they really need, like the appropriate way to report, good descriptions of what is expected and must be prevented, no retaliation provisions and the like. Again, effective and accessible complaint system needs to be there. Somebody that knows they have an issue needs to also know how to raise their hand and get somebody's attention to address it. And then there needs to be effective training, really including both your management team and employees, so that everybody can be on the same page about knowing what's expected and what needs to be done. So what can happen? What can really happen when you have situations where, especially people in management, don't live up, don't do what they ought to do in their treatment of others? Well, here's an example from March of 2020, company Porous Materials. A former plant manager used racial slurs, called foreign-born employees terrorists, made crude racist remarks to the only African-American employee, mocked employees for speaking other languages, loudly called women vulgar names. He was sort of an equal opportunity jerk. Said women could not perform a man's job. This is a guy in management now. Made unwanted sexual advances and commented on female employees' bodies. And in addition to monetary relief, the employer was subject to a 4-year consent decree, which required training for the owner and all managers and employees. And it was required to retain an outside entity to investigate discrimination complaints. So this business had to undergo training, had to have training. They're required to pay an outside organization to investigate whenever they had a discrimination complaint come up in their workplace. They are also required to promptly report to the EEOC their handling of discrimination complaints. Here's another one from March of 2020. The allegations were that employees were subjected to harassment and to retaliation for complaining. The harassment included unwelcome touching, sexual comments, and just generally derogatory comments about women. The inadequate response to complaints about a supervisor and retaliation by denying hours and other retaliatory treatment. There was a monetary settlement of this case with the EEOC of $690,000. So those are some real consequences for this business that allowed a lot of just totally inappropriate behavior to go on. And when it came up, not only did they fail to address it appropriately, the people that brought it up were retaliated against. The EEOC filed suit against the Harley-Davidson dealership in February of this year. The allegations that a female business manager got constant harassment from both managers and coworkers, including comments about her body, requests that she wear more revealing clothing, sexual comments, unwelcome sexual propositions, and that she was sent sexual images and videos. All of this directed to one person. And the last bullet point is something that we got to be very aware of these days. We've had multiple claims come in to our office just within the last year, where one part of the allegations was that one person or another was usually by text these days and sometimes by email, sending wildly inappropriate pictures and videos to each other. And so if you happen to get into a situation that involves a harassment allegation, you got to be aware that we need to check. We need to look for electronically stored information, such as images and videos on text and email, as part of the investigation. Just seems to go on a lot these days. The allegation is that when the business manager complained about this behavior, she was discharged, and that's a clear retaliation issue, assuming if that is actually what happened. Retaliation is a very common and a very dangerous claim. It's the most frequently filed claim at the EEOC these days, and it's one that has a lot of appeal to judges and juries because it's just such a common sense thing that if somebody complains about you, if you're walking down the street and somebody pushes you, your first instinct is to push back. And so it's something that, it doesn't take a lot of legal scholarly thought to believe that, well, gosh, if somebody's complaining about our workplace, maybe the owner, maybe the manager wants to get them back, wants to push them back. And it's a common claim. And there's been a number of cases in recent years. One that comes to mind was a hospital up in New York where the employee that brought the claim alleged race discrimination and that she was denied a promotion, et cetera, on the basis of her race. And then also that she was retaliated against after she complained. And it went all the way to a jury, and the jury ruled in favor of the company on the race discrimination piece, but gave her a multi-million-dollar award on the retaliation piece. So, they found, in other words, that this individual was not discriminated against on the basis of race, but was retaliated against. So we got to be very careful of that. Fidelity, the claim was based on national origin discrimination. The employee was a telemarketing supervisor. Within the first week, she learned that all potential customers who were perceived to be Middle Eastern or Indian were to be rejected for sales appointment for home energy systems. She was of Afghan descent. The distress of having to discriminate against would-be customers caused her to resign. How can she sue if she resigned? Well, there's a concept in the law called constructive discharge. And if you hear a lawyer use the word constructive in front of something, what that means is, well, maybe it didn't really happen, but we're going to pretend like it did. In an employment law setting, if they say constructive discharge, what that means is that the company created working conditions that were so awful that any reasonable person would have resigned. And so when the employee did, they were really effectively discharged because no reasonable person could be expected to work under those conditions. And that's what this lady alleged. The EEOC said that the conditions created a hostile work environment for her based on national origin. The employer agreed to a settlement in that situation of $350,000 for an employee who only worked there for weeks. So that's a strong example of what can happen if people don't live we don't embody and require the values that we're looking for. So that's what I wanted to share in terms of some recent cases. If we got questions about any of those things, I'll be happy to talk about them.
Any questions? Howard, that was a lot.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anything before, I'm just looking right here just to make sure, anybody like to add or any questions of Howard? And Howard, you're generally real open to if somebody's got a very—
Somebody has to follow up. Yep, shoot you an email. You can forward it to me or they can email me.
Okay. And then the last thing I would say, so we'll record this and then it has been recorded. We'll push it out tomorrow if you'd like to go back. and take a look. Also, if you need a certificate for continuing education credits, just pop me an email or put it in chat here in the next second or so. And I don't have anything. Great job, Howard. Great job. And sorry, we had just a little bit of glitch on the front, but that's how Zoom goes these days.
It is. Glad to do it. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you, Howard.
Thanks, Howard. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Anytime.
Thank you, Howard. Have a good weekend.